But I want to get into our get to our special guest speaker. So the last thing I want to say, for those of you who are brand new, who haven't been to one of these sessions before, we make them interactive. So please, if you have any comments, just put them into the comments box. And I try to give out as many shout outs as possible. Like, for example, I see that Isabel has joined from Quebec. Hi there, Isabel. Great to see you again. So lots of familiar faces here. But also, please ask your questions of either me or my special guest. And when you ask a question, wherever you are, whether it's LinkedIn, Facebook, or YouTube, wherever you are, just put 2 capital Qs in front of your question. The reason for that is sometimes there are so many comments. It might be that I miss your question during the course of the session. Always a little bit easier when I have a guest because I can keep one eye on the comments box. But if you put those 2 capital Qs in front, that will just help me see the question come through. And then at some point before the end of the hour, I will try to make sure we deal with and get through as many questions as possible. This is my, and Sarah's just helped me out. This is what 2 capital Qs look like, just in case you're not sure. Ask your questions in that format. That'll really help. This is my second live stream of this week. This is a busy week for live streams. Some of you I know came yesterday, where I had the amazing Peter Thompson, one of my heroes, one of my mentors that had a big influence on my career. So catch up with the recording if you missed that. And then I'll remind you later, but we have a session on Thursday with Emily and me on ChatGPT and helping you to grow your firm through marketing. Anyway, it's time. It's 5 past. It is time to bring in my special guest. My special guest, let me introduce him first. It's Michael Palmer, and I've known Michael for many years. He is an entrepreneur, author, speaker. He's got huge amounts of experience in the industry. I met him several years ago over in, I forget the first time, Michael, whether I was in the US or Canada. It was one of my many trips, but many people said you need to talk to Michael. He's doing amazing things in the area of systems, automation in the world of bookkeeping. He is the CEO of Pure Bookkeeping, providing training and support for bookkeepers around the world. And he's also the host of the Successful Bookkeeper podcast, which I know very well because Michael's kindly asked me to speak several times. And so let's bring in Michael. Hi there, Michael. And how's things with you?
It's great. I'm great. And, it's always great to have conversations with great people like you. So I was just actually in my head there thinking when we actually did meet for the first time, and it was in Toronto at, I think it was QBO something. I don't think it was Connect at the time, but it was when QBO was getting their live events going, and we met at the York Hotel in downtown Toronto. That was way back. I think it was like 15, 16, something like that.
December 2015 or November 2015.
Yeah, you got it. It was in the fall. It was in the winter.
Yeah, they called it Thrive. It was Thrive.
That's right. Yep. It was Thrive.
That was the event.
Yeah, so you were speaking there.
Yeah, that was my first time speaking in Canada, and I loved the experience. There was over in Canada, you're such friendly people, and there's lots of Canadians follow me, people like Isabel, for example, here. I love the Canadians, and Sarah and I haven't traveled since COVID. Nothing really to do with COVID, but more the fact that I think we'd done so many events over in the US and Canada over 5 years. And I love this virtual world because it's much easier to just walk down the stairs to go and do than to travel. Yeah, however, just a little heads up is Sarah and I are planning to come to Canada next year. And we might even do a little event. So possibly we've blocked out in the calendar for, I think, September of next year, when it's a beautiful time of the year. So I'll be reaching out to you, Michael, if we do that, because I'd love to meet up with you for real. And any of my other Canadian friends here. Anyway, more on that later. That's just a sneak peek to get people a little bit excited about what might happen next year. So, Michael, great to have you on this show here. And
good to be here.
I know we've had lots of conversations before. I think you've kindly invited me to do about 2, if not 3, of your podcasts, which I've always enjoyed doing.
You're always a great guest. When it's something about pricing or, just your journey in general, it's such a valuable, always a really well-received episode. And you've impacted so many lives of the people that I work with and listeners of the show with your pricing methodologies. So, it's many and many more that you'll
Yeah.
be on. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Michael, for that, for those kind words. And likewise, the things I hear from people like Teresa Slack and so on about the things you do with systems and stuff for bookkeepers is extraordinary, which is why I'm so excited to talk about this topic. So kind of let's dive in. Actually, no, first question, Michael, is perhaps just for people who don't know who you are. I know I gave you a little bit of an introduction, but do you want to just give people a little bit of an intro and your background? How do you get from to where you are today?
Yeah, that's right. Well, it's a good question, and I will tell you, 10 years ago, if you said, "Oh, you'd be working and working with bookkeepers and helping bookkeepers transform their businesses," and I would have said, "You're crazy." And it's like I wouldn't have been able to connect the dots because my background was in the corporate world, management, sales, project management, those sorts of things, and about 10 years after corporate world, I met a coach and started working with he was a life coach at the time, actually, and kind of like a career coach. I was sort of disenfranchised with the corporate world, was climbing the ladder and realized I did not want to be a part of that. It wasn't fulfilling for me. But what I loved was the development, being in management, developing people, helping people discover what it is that was important to them and how they could perform in their current jobs or actually go and do the things that they wanted to do or love to do. So longer story short, I got into coaching and I started training, became a certified coach, and left the corporate world and started a coaching practice, and quickly discovered that it wasn't really life coaching that I wanted to do or that I liked doing. I loved working with small business owners, helping them get clear on what they were doing, where things were working, not working, all that good stuff. And at the time, I also owned a small bistro. It was a family bistro, went partners with my mother and her partner in that business. And kind of two things happening at the same time. I was reading or introduced to E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber. It's all about building a system-driven business. And my mom was always complaining about her business. I was like, wait a second, this book is really funny. The E-Myth Bookkeeper is written about Sarah, who owns a pie shop. Well, my mom owned a bistro, right? Lunches and coffees and that good, those sorts of things. And I was like, I think some of this might help you, Mom. So I sent her a DVD right back then, and she listened to it when she would get to the coffee shop really early. Of course, they got to do baking and get all this stuff ready. So much happens in these small businesses before we even show up to buy our goods. And she'd be listening to Michael Gerber and the book, and we started implementing systems into her business. Well, guess what? Her business became easier, it became more profitable, and really much more efficient. And my mom enjoyed the work so much more because of the systems that she implemented. Now, she didn't implement the heck out of it. She just added some systems and it improved dramatically the business. And so anytime we added a system, it improved. So this whole concept in eMyth was solve a problem with a system. Well, about the same time, I'd moved to Australia and I was coaching some people, and I met another business coach, Peter Cook, who said, "Hey, I'm starting this company to help bookkeepers grow their bookkeeping business, and we're looking for a coach to help us do this." So at the time, living in Australia, didn't know that many people. I'm like, "That sounds interesting." And the whole concept was he had coached a bookkeeper for about 6 years who had literally implemented and read first eMyth Bookkeeper. So I was right away understood what they were talking about, very passionate about eMyth at the time, and had coached her in building a system driven and a system dependent bookkeeping firm. And they were taking all those systems and selling to other bookkeepers. I'm like, this sounds great. What a great idea. And that's where it started with Pure Bookkeeping. That was the launch of Pure Bookkeeping. That was in late 2009, early 2010. And I helped them launch Pure Bookkeeping in Australia. And then we brought Pure Bookkeeping to North America. I mean, it was a lot of in-between stuff there, but I really threw my life into coaching and mentoring and helping bookkeepers from a business coach perspective, because I'm not a bookkeeper. Many people think, "Oh, Michael, you know bookkeeping." I absolutely no bookkeeping. I have a business degree, but I'm absolutely horrible at it. And I make sure I tell everybody that, because I honor and respect the work that bookkeepers do, and they do such a great job of it. And like my father, he was horrible at bookkeeping, and was one of the reasons why he probably lacked the success in his business, was he didn't have a great bookkeeper. So this whole helping bookkeepers became very personal to me, in that I knew that by helping bookkeepers who were running a business, helping them become better at what they were doing, would actually deliver a better product and service to their owners. And so every single one of their clients is my dad. And so I'm helping my dad all the time by helping these great bookkeepers, and it feels great and I love it. And it's evolved definitely over the years, when we created the podcast, The Successful Bookkeeper, to provide, let's interview some of these bookkeepers. It started really as interviewing other bookkeeping business owners, but turned into other thought leaders and anybody that a bookkeeper would want to listen to. And so now here we are. We have bookkeepers all over North America, Australia, a few in the UK. We're going back into the UK, which use the pure bookkeeping system to build a system-driven business. And we're approaching 1 million downloads of the Successful Bookkeeper podcast, which is just absolutely phenomenal and almost, to me, unbelievable. I'm like, really? That many people have downloaded? Come on. But that's in it in a nutshell.
Wow, that's I love the story, the journey, and one of the things that was interesting was the conversation, what you're talking about with how you came across Michael Gerber, which was for me his message had a huge impact on my life as well. Back in the 1990s, I was running my sole practitioner accounting business, and everything was around in my head. I had no systems whatsoever. And it wasn't until the end of 1998 that I was introduced by Michael by Steve Pipe. Many people on the watching know Steve, because I've had him as a guest as well. And it was when I went to his 3-day accountants masterclass, and he got me and the other people in the room to watch a 60-minute video. And I just wonder if it's the same one that you mentioned, the DVD. So I watched that Michael Gerber video, then went and read the book straight away. And like many people, my instant reaction is, he's talking about me. That's me. I am the E-myth, the entrepreneurial myth, running around crazy, doing everything myself. So I love that background. Let's start with a really big question, though, because before
you jump onto that next big nugget is what's sad? I talk to so many young entrepreneurs and business owners now today. And I asked them, I'd start telling the story about E-myth or talking about E-myth, because it's hard to explain to people what his system is. They're like, a computer system, and it's hard. So I try and say, well, have you read E-myth? And we're talking like some significant people in the industry they've not read it. They don't know anything about it. And it's unfortunate, because it's such a critical piece to growing a bookkeeping business. And I think E-myth is, back in the day, E-myth would have been a great name. Today, not so much. Email came along, because this book was written 40 years ago or more now. I always sort of get locked into a number, but it's maybe close to 45 years now. And E-myth, there was no email. So people think, well, it's electronic myth. What is electronic myth? If you haven't read it, so anyone that's viewing, if you haven't read it, the book to read is E-myth Revisited. Absolutely. And the DVD was not a video. It was the Audible book back in the day, when you had to get a tape. This was a DVD at the time. So it was the Audible book that my mom was listening to. And actually I listened to it as well. So I read the book, and then I also listened to it in the car as I was driving to work and whatnot at the time. And so if you haven't listened to it, if you haven't read it, it's the book to read, because it really is you will fully understand the beauty of systems and why they're so important for you and your business, and start to talk about how you can start building those. But sorry to cut you off there, Mark, with that.
No, that's fine. That's great clarification, because I often tell people that the E-myth Revisited is probably the most important business book ever written, and it should be compulsory reading for every business owner. It's that powerful, the message. So yes, thank you for that clarification. It's got nothing to do with electronic, the E. It's the entrepreneurial myth, and he explains it in the book what he means by that. So You need
Yes.
to read the book to find out. Anyway, so my first question for you was kind of a big one,
Yes.
really, probably a short answer. But when you wrote the synopsis for this session, the very first line said about it really is possible to run a business without you and make money. So my question is that true? Can you really run a business without you being involved in it and make money?
Absolutely. It's absolutely possible. And I always think of it like on a spectrum. There's the person that's at the grindstone, sharpening the knives or, the axe or whatever the case may be. They are the business owner. They started it. They do the work. They are not going to make money if they don't sharpen axes. And I don't know why I picked that, but I drove by a knife sharpening van at the side of someone's house. I'm like, such a cool old van. And it was this antique van, and they had a little kiosk, and he's driving through the like ice cream, but you get your knives. So you're running out there with your knives, hopefully not too fast, but you're running out, like the dinging's going, and he's sharpening the knives in the van outside on people's driveway. And if he doesn't drive around and sharpen those knives, he's not making, or she's not making, any money. Now, then you go up the spectrum. Well, can someone else ride along in the van and do the knife sharpening? And that's where systems are required, right? Someone has to know how to do it, because I've used, wasn't a van. It was a little cart way back when I moved to Toronto. The very first time I heard this dinging, I look outside. Oh, they're sharpening knives. I go down, get my knife sharpened. It did a horrible job. So I never did it again, but probably didn't have any systems in the business for them. Right up to the other spectrum, where you've got someone like Shaquille O'Neal, who owns like 200 franchises and makes money in his sleep from these franchises. Now, he would be on the very far spectrum, where he's not flipping burgers, he's not cleaning bathrooms, he's probably not even looking at anything but a balance sheet. And down the stream from Shaquille right back to the axe grinder, there are systems. And the more systems you have in the business, and training and proper protocols and processes, that's how you get to the Shaquille O'Neal. That's why the franchise businesses do well, is they have very solid systems. And if we talk about Michael Gerber's E-Myth, they talk about McDonald's, right? That was what, like, the burger shop was great. The one that the McDonald's, were they called the McDonald's brothers? I always forget this, but
yes, the McDonald's brothers, yes.
The McDonald's brothers, yes. The two McDonald's brothers started this great burger shop, and they created systems in the business in order to create a really solid outcome, and that it was efficient and all these wonderful things. It was all system driven. And then someone came along and said, wow, you've created a machine here, but they didn't get the scale. The Ray Kroc, he was the entrepreneur, right? So they were the manager and the technicians, right? And probably entrepreneurial as well, because they wanted to build a great business. Not sure that they could see the scale opportunity with McDonald's. And so Ray Kroc then brought in and say, look, again, it's a system-driven business. The better systems you have, the less you have to pay people, the less skill that they need. It's repeatable, it's scalable, and the quality goes way up with that. So, it's a headline that says, yeah, you can build a business that does not need you. And that sometimes for small business owners is hard to sort of even believe or understand or grapple with, right? And that's not like, so you have to scale in order to do that. You can't make money from a bookkeeping business if you're the only person in the business. You have to add people, right? And so as you add systems, you're able then to scale up and add more people.
Yeah, awesome. My story, when I came across Michael Gerber back in the end of 1998, as I said, I was a sole practitioner doing absolutely everything in the firm. I had employees, but I still did everything. And that had a huge impact on me. And I spent 1999 just writing systems. And we'll talk perhaps a bit more about what systems are in a second. But I just spent 99 just writing systems after system after system after system. And let me think, it was January 1999 was the last time I ever did a tax return. I did all the tax returns before that, and I put a system in place for doing tax returns, and I trained my team to do them. And then in May 1999 was the last time I did a set of annual financial statements. I trained my team to do that, which freed me up to do business advisory work, which for me was much more exciting doing the business advisory. And then I trained my team. I even had a system for how you run board meetings, and we had a monthly meeting. And in 2003, I effectively left the business because I was then teaching accountants. I'd been working with Steve Pike for 3 years, teaching accountants. And I spent the next 3 years, I sold the business to my client managers in 2006. And between 2003 and 2006, I went into that business for 1 day per month to just run the board meeting system, which was basically my way of checking they were doing things and to help them and to coach them, and so they could take over the business from me. And they bought it from me. So it ran itself for the last 3 years of it with no involvement from me. And I hadn't done technical work between 1999 and 2006. So it's absolutely possible to run a business without you being there and still make money. So let's go to a simpler question for people who have no idea. You touched on it earlier, Michael. What is a system? What do we just give some examples of perhaps the simplicity of what we're talking about here?
Yeah, absolutely. So as simple as it can be, it's a set of documents that tell you specifically what to do, how to do it, and when you know you've done a good job of it. That's what it is. And it's instructions, right? So in eMyth Bookkeeper, not eMyth Bookkeeper, we'll talk about eMyth Bookkeeper in a bit, but in eMyth Revisited, one of the famous lines from the book is this hotel manager, someone new gets hired at this hotel. I think it was like a bespoke kind of hotel or something like that. Airbnb has turned everything upside down here on all of this, so can't remember what it was even called, but the manager says to the employee, pulls out this manual and hands it to them, and it's like, this here is the way we do things around here, right? The way we do things around here. And so everything in that manual was the documentation of what they do. And so when you open it up, it's like, if you want to know how to do everything from top to tail, just like you said, the board meeting, right down to the technical work in the business, sales, marketing, every domain of the business can have documented processes that are explicit in how to do something. And so that is what a system is. And when you do them, someone can pick that up. And the idea being that if they followed those instructions, they would be able to do it exactly as well as the person who wrote those instructions. And that's the aim, to get to that level. Yeah,
great answer. A lot of people think that systems are software, and software can be systems.
Yes, right.
But they can be as simple as a system I think of as a step-by-step process. And then within that process are individual elements. So a system could be as simple as a standard meeting agenda for how you conduct a meeting, the questions you ask in a particular type of meeting. That's a system. And I think that one of the most powerful types of systems, systems can consist of standard email, standard checklists, processors, standard forms. But one of the simplest systems, and sometimes the most powerful one, is the scripts, the words that we say. And the good example of that, Michael, as you probably know, is McDonald's are brilliant at that. I know they've changed the questions over the years, but when you went to buy a burger, you could guarantee they'd always say, do you want fries with that? And that made them millions and millions of dollars because they knew that some people didn't automatically say yes, who just want to buy the burger. And then when they asked the question, do you want fries with that? Yeah, go on then, I'll have fries. They systemized that process.
Yeah, ridiculously amazing results on that. Like if there's any cafe owners, right? We had the bistro, something simple as training your staff and it's like, this is what you say, a script is just that, would you like whatever that other thing that you have to sell that goes great with whatever most people come in and buy, you will increase sales. And it's a dramatic number. It's probably 30-40% increase in the amount of people that'll take up that offer, which is crazy. And that's the exact sample of a system. It's not like they're going out there and they're like, what do I say? And they're saying something different every single time. No, they are trained to say exactly your experience in McDonald's it's like this big Broadway production. They go to school to learn how to put on the McDonald's show every single day. And it is exactly the same in every single city around the world. It's absolutely remarkable.
Absolutely. As most people know, I teach pricing, and most firms have no pricing systems, and yet they're so important. Even simple things like people say to me sometimes, "So, Mark, what do I do if somebody rings me up and says I'm looking for a bookkeeper, and I want to know how much it's going to cost?" Well, if you don't have a script for answering that question, you'll answer in a random way every single time, just making it up. You need to script that so you answer it the very best way to deal with the price question when you get that from initial phone call. You need to put it off. So
Absolutely. And
let
that's a great example of a system that likely doesn't happen that often. So it's one of those, it's where I think one of the beginnings of the breakdowns of actually not having systems in your business is that you think, oh, well, it only happens a couple of times and I'll get to that later. And how difficult can it be? What's the impact? Well, if you think about exactly what you said is they're answering it randomly. So you have no way of knowing what works and what doesn't work. And it will always be a problem until you solve that problem with a system. And it's directly attached to the revenue of your business. And so it's like this idea of like small things count. They really do. If we're building a house brick by brick, if we're not adding bricks, guess what? No house. We got to add the brick one at a time, put on the concrete and the cement. And I know we don't build with bricks all that often, but good analogy. You're putting these bricks in. So that one little system is going to be one brick in the wall of your system driven business. And one like that, when you have a script around pricing, is going to lead to revenue. If you did that conversation once a month, that's 12 conversations that you would do better at in a year. And then if it's more than that, again, the numbers just keep going up. And you got to think in a bookkeeping business, it's recurring revenue, right? You get a client, you keep a client for the most part. It's why it's such a great industry. So if you miss one, the impact of that one is remarkably huge. And I could go on with how important just that one script to just figure it out, get it done. And now when they call, you just have to click a button on your computer or flip open however you work in your business to go and, oh, here's my script. Let me answer that. The steps afterwards. Here's the email template that goes out. Here's, the documents already attached. Like the whole start to finish of that process starts to get built, but people don't start because it seems bigger than it needs to be. And they don't think it's as important. Perhaps there's other important, less urgent things or I guess urgent and maybe seemingly less important things to do. So I love that analogy. And again, just to say the systems around pricing, if you're going to start somewhere, start with Mark's program because that has a system of pricing. And we know so many people have done it. Get it tackled because it's one that will make such an impact to your business that you will be able to have more revenue per customer, which adds capacity potentially. If you get rid of the customers that aren't willing to pay you, you're going to add capacity. And what are you going to do with that capacity? Add more systems.
You said something earlier that I thought was interesting that I thought I'd build on. When you've got a system in place, if you haven't got a system, everything happens by chance. It's random. It's luck.
It's random.
But once you've got a system in place, you've got something that becomes testable, becomes measurable, so you can then improve the business. So, for example, you might have a system for how you conduct a sales meeting, the initial meeting with a client, and you might have a script and a system for the information you gather in advance of the meeting and how you follow up. So once you've got a system in place for the sales meeting, so it's structured, your meeting is structured, the words you say are structured, then you can measure it. You can measure what's my conversion rate from meeting new clients. And then once you've measured it, if you then come across an idea, perhaps you listen to Michael's podcast or something and you think, oh, that's a great idea. I could do that in my sales meetings. You build it into the system, you measure it again. And if the numbers improve, then that's a great thing to add in and you systemize the process. Rather than usually what happens, we just rely on luck.
That's right.
What I thought might be useful is, I know I've seen some few questions coming in. I think people want some examples of what are great systems I have and so on. But before we get into some examples of other systems for bookkeeping firms, perhaps we could talk a bit about what are some of the mistakes that people make when they are trying to automate and systemize their business? What mistakes do you see, Michael?
Yeah, absolutely. The right away is the misunderstanding of the level of detail and the amount of time it's going to take to build those systems, and it can be deflating, right? And that's part, you got to go into it with the long haul, the long game, right? So let's talk about the pricing conversation, right? The script for the pricing conversation. A good, better than nothing is a very simple script, right? But then that's got to be improved. Like you said, there's measurement that could be implied. There's what happens after that. So it's a mistake is that you don't get started and you underestimate the level of detail and the amount of time that it'll take, because you really want to write the system for yourself first, because you're likely the creator of these systems. You're writing it for yourself first, but then the next layer and the rewrite is all the things that you just know already how to do and you don't think are important that have to go into that. So in the script, what's the tonality, right? How fast should you be speaking? Should you be smiling, right? All these little things that you wouldn't think. Like if I picked up the phone, the way I am going to do a script is going to be very different than another person that picks up the phones. And we've all experienced that, right? We've called companies where they say something to us and you go, oh, that person wasn't very friendly. They didn't seem nice. They didn't seem accommodating. It's because they haven't been trained specifically exactly how to speak on the telephone, and then coached and corrected, on how to do it based on the systems. It's like you write a system for someone. The other mistake is you don't train them, you don't follow up, you don't rewrite, you don't improve, right? And so you have to keep coming back and saying, well, look, we've got this system. Are people doing the system? Just like you had the board meeting, Mark. The board meeting was to make sure they were doing the systems, right? Let's check the numbers. How are things going? Is that happening the way it should? Coaching and correction on actually making sure that things are going in the way that they should be going.
Yep, great, yeah. And what was I thinking there? Something went through my mind. It's just gone back out of my my mind again, because you then said another thing that was really important. I created systems like the board meeting system, and that was a really powerful way of quality control everything that people were doing. I'm really annoyed because I just something else popped into my mind that that I really wanted to say. Oh yes, that's right. Yeah. So the first thing you said, which was really powerful, was people underestimate the amount of work required to systemize. And I think a key thing to be aware is that the process of systemizing your business is never complete, because there's always things we can improve. It's an ongoing process. And when I came across the E-Myth back in 1998. I mean, for me, I knew I had to change. And the reason for me, by the way, just as an aside, was my first child, Gabby, was born in February of 1999. And by the end of 1998, I was working crazy long hours. And I thought, you know what? If I don't get control of my business, I'm going to miss seeing her grow up. And so for me, that was the incentive. And so 1999, I systemized everything in my business, but I did it by I spent every single Friday full day. I blocked out Fridays. Every Friday I wrote systems. It was a labor of love. It did have some detrimental impacts on the income earning capacity of the business, because I was the number one fee earner, but I was just focused on systems, and it was hard. But I realized how important that was, and the benefits later were huge. Please don't underestimate it, which is why it's better to just, rather than reinvent the wheel, tap into systems that for example, Michael's created. He's got some great systems. So don't start from scratch.
Yeah, and
It's
I will
hard work.
say, I didn't create them. I did not create them, because remember, I'm not the bookkeeper. I'm the business coach, right? So Debbie Roberts created them, and talk about time. So Debbie Roberts was a bookkeeper for 20 years. Great bookkeeper, worked on really sophisticated accounts and businesses, but she was an employee. And it's a beautiful story, because she was Sarah's Pies, right? It's like her chiropractor was like, Debbie, why don't you start a business? You're going to make more money. You're going to have more free time. You're going to have way more fun, right? Like, and literally, it's like Debbie's like, no, that's not me, all this good stuff. But eventually she said, well, yeah, you know what? Why not me? Right. So she started this business within 18 months. No, question. She had more clients than she could handle. She was working 7 days a week. She was working late. She was being pulled away from her family, just like you said. And she was like, this is not what I wanted. She was working more. She was actually earning less, and she felt out of control. And so she was fortunate to meet her then, who became her business coach, Peter Cook. They were both at a BNI, Business Networking International. And Peter got up, did his little talk about, because every BNI has a 60-second pitch. He talked about loving your business. And Debbie's like, I don't love my business. I got to talk to that guy. So she went over to Peter, told him her story. And he said, look, if you were to get everything out of your head and onto paper, do you think that would help you run your business more effectively? Because she had tried to hire people, and it was just an absolute nightmare, because she was very good at what she did, and she cared deeply about her clients and the quality of work that she put out. And every team member that she tried to put on would mess it all up. He said, read eMyth. She read eMyth, and that was the beginning of 6 years working with Pete. So she hired a coach, right, to help her. And they worked together for 6 years, implementing and building and writing standard operating procedures for her bookkeeping business. And after 6 years, she had 12 staff working with her. Same sort of story. She could leave for 6 weeks at a time. The business ran itself without her. And she got to the point where she would just check in, she maybe day a week. She never fully, that was her life. So she never really fully, like yourself, one day a month. It was like one day a week. And it was all management activities, like how are you doing, and talking to the top leads in the business. And so if you look at 6 years, the amount of time, and then when she got bigger, she actually had some of her staff members working on those systems and writing and rewriting and creating all of that. And then now Pure Bookkeeping started back in 2009. Here we are in 2023. The system gets rewritten just about every year. Like, it was like every couple of years we'd do a few additions. But as we've gone into this world of rapid change, we're constantly changing, updating, improving. And now our thousands of bookkeepers that work in the system actually provide. So it's become like a crowdsourced best practice bookkeeping documentation for bookkeepers to go and use. So you think, okay, I always go, well, I know what we do is great, helps a lot of people. And people go, oh, well, I'm going to try and do it myself. And that's one of the other mistakes, is that they don't have enough pain to know. They don't know what's around the corner yet to know how important systems are. And you can get by on your own, okay, with it all up in your head. But then when you try to add somebody, unless you're really, really good at hiring, or you're super, super lucky, you're going to hire people maybe, and it's all working, it's all great. And then those people leave, because what you've built, many people build, most small businesses out there are people dependent businesses. They've hired good people to run the business. They're great at what they do, the all-stars, right? If they leave with all that knowledge, they leave with all of that information and process and skill, and you're left with what? Nothing. Whereas a system dependent, when you commit to a system dependent business, you're building, it doesn't matter if the people come and go, it's about the system and how that's all being done. So that's where it's been like 15 years and multiple people working on this thing. It's huge in order to get it to the point where it can actually do what it's promising to do, which is to help you run a system-driven business.
Great. That's some really important stuff there. You very kindly said that pricing systems are critically important, but let's also,
Yes.
there are other things that are important as well. Let's just talk a bit. Let's get practical for a minute and talk about what are some of the, for a bookkeeping business or a small accounting firm, what should we, and I think Noel actually asked this question. Noel did say, let me find out. He says, we hear systemize a lot, but what systems should an accounting firm have? So where should we start with systems? What are the most important systems that we should be putting in place within our accounting firms?
Absolutely the technical work, right? It's wherever you want to look is, there's a couple of ways of looking at that, right? It can be, like if I'm looking at it from a bookkeeping business, obviously the technical work is something you're probably trying to get your hands off those tools, right? And so it's kind of like another, like for myself in the business, if as we've grown over the years, I've been just like that. We run a business that helps bookkeepers, training, development. We've got lots of different software systems, all sorts of things going on, right? I've been the person on the tools often. As the business grows, if I keep on the tools, guess what? I'm a bottleneck. Okay. So what I look for when I'm adding systems is like, what do I have to get off my plate? And that's where I will say, okay, I'm doing this. I no longer want to or can do this. So that's an area just like you, right, Mark? You wrote systems and process to remove yourself from a specific task in the business. But getting back, so you could look at it through that lens, I guess. But realistically, if you're going to be hiring people into the business, it's likely going to be the technical work. And that would be the place to start, because there's, all aspects of the business. We talked about pricing. That's going to be a massive impact. If you're hitting that right in your business, that's going to be a massive impact to your revenue, to your profitability, and then as well in human resources, right? How you hire people, how you bring them on, how you train them, how you get them up to speed quickly. But again, in order to do that, you need to have all the documentation of what those people are going to be trained in and learn, and how they're going to run about their business. And then, of course, in today's world, technology, workflow software is huge in the industry, and it's a requirement to get things out of your head as well, and all that knowledge of what's going on with each client into something that's in the cloud that anyone can access, and that it's again, you would need to have that software, and then you would need all the training and documentation around how to use that in the business. And that was one evolution for Pure, is we were writing all this documentation on best practice bookkeeping for an accounting software like QuickBooks or Xero or Sage 50, and then others in Australia, other softwares. They're all different ones in each country that are used. But then we were helping people implement these things into all sorts of different workflow software tools. And so that became really challenging, because they're all different. Those are all changing constantly. And so what we did is we really narrowed it down and went all in on one, so that we could not only add all of our systems, checklists, standardized processing to one workflow software, but also have all of the links in that workflow software back to our training and development. So when a person's doing their job, it's like, oh, I can't remember how to do this step. Click here, it goes right back to the checklist, or the training, or the explanation on how to do that task. And then we have the documentation on how to actually use that software. So again, we're just taking that system development further and further and further, so that everything you're doing has a system for your team. Hopefully that answers the question.
It does, and great advice. I agree with everything that you said. You said start with the technical systems, and if I think back to my systemization journey, I kind of touched on it earlier. I started with tax returns. I just thought, I spend so much time filling in tax returns. I don't particularly enjoy doing tax returns. I just discovered business advisory. I didn't like doing tax returns, so I thought, let me systemize that first. That was the first thing that I did. Then I recognized that the second thing that I spent most of my time on was finalizing annual financial statements. So I then focused on that I did between January and May 99, which is why I then didn't have to do them ever again after that point in time. And so I started off with the technical stuff, because that was what was taking up most of my time. The one thing I would then add is, when you're looking at systems, the other advice I heard many, many years ago, Michael, was the other things that are the most important when you're systemizing your business are the client-facing systems, because they're the things that impact on clients. You want to give amazing, consistent customer service. So yes, you could write a system on how people make the coffee in the morning, but that's not going to impact on the customers. That might be a great behind-the-scenes system to have, but it really should be what systems can better impact on the customers? How can we systemize the process of greeting them when they come in for a meeting that's going to make them go, wow, this firm's amazing. I need to tell people about this firm. They just are extraordinary, the things that they do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's so important. And it brings up one little system that Debbie had in her business, which was, she specifically said, when, during your day, the things that you can, do during the day. Don't have calls when you're working on client files, personal calls. What's the, and things have changed in the world, right? But back in the day, it was like, what to wear, what is business appropriate or business not appropriate. I don't know that there is anything like that anymore. It's pretty much anything goes in the world today, it seems. But things like that. And it was one of the areas that we had constantly rewriting. And Teresa, you mentioned Teresa Slack. Teresa Slack had done such a great job of that, building into her own business. That was one of the things we hired her to actually supplement and rewrite our client onboarding, which is that whole customer journey from a lead to a client. What are all the steps that need to happen through that journey? And of course, one of those steps is, ring up Mark Wickersham and do his pricing program so you price it properly. But, the step-by-step, what to say, how to say it, presentations for them, all of the scripts as you've mentioned, so that you're treating your customers amazingly and consistently throughout the life cycle of the customer.
Awesome. We have about 7 minutes left, Michael. I mean, I
Great.
love this topic. And I know you do as well, because it was such an important part of my journey with my first accounting firm. And I still, to this very day, systems is something that is kind of deep inside me in this particular business that I have now, the Value Pricing Academy. So much of what we do is systemize. We have a process for systemizing things, because I know that one of the things that I don't think we've touched on, but one of the big reasons why firms need to systemize is because I guess that everybody watching here is a business owner. At some point, they might want to sell their business. And the problem is, if your business is 100% dependent on you being there every single day, then anybody buying your business is buying a job, because they're going to have to do what you are doing right now. And so it impacts on the sellability of your business once you've systemized it. And it can run without you. You can still run the business. I love this business, but I spend a lot of time systemizing processes so that other people can do the things that I do. And I think it's really critical to consider that as part of your exit.
It is. And it was one conversation I had actually with Peter. He was over from Australia, over in Ontario a couple of weeks ago. And we were talking about it was actually an unrelated industry, but, selling a business, if you haven't systematized it and you are still a key piece of the business, well, when you go to sell it, they're going to want you to stick around and do the work. And I know lots of people who've done that, and it's horrible, because now you were an entrepreneur, you were running the show, building this business. And if you're still a degree to needing to be there, now you have a boss. And so you're going to hate it. And you've got to, have measurements and all of these different things to make sure that you get your full payout. Whereas if you have a business that is like you had created, a business that was independent of you, completely arm's length, that business is being bought as an ecosystem, right? Without you. And it doesn't need you to perform at the numbers and metrics that are being scrutinized and determined, right? So you literally could sell that business and walk away from it. And if you think about it, the valuation of the business, it's pretty easy to see that if this is the business, it doesn't have Mark involved, Mark is selling it, the valuation of that will be a lot more certain, because think about retention of clients. If Mark has got a lot relationships with, sorry, there was a fluff coming by there. If there was if Mark has a relationship with a bunch of the clients, if Mark leaves, we know that those clients might leave as well. But if you have an ecosystem that's running without you, that's not going to change. You're buying an asset that is not likely to change in any way, shape, or form, just like a McDonald's or a Burger King or not Starbucks, but some of these other franchises. They get sold all the time, bought and sold. And those rarely, no one knows. Nobody even knows who owns those things, because they're run by people inside the business that do it day in, day out. So the value of it goes way up.
Awesome. We're running out of time, but there's at least 2 more questions that I want to ask you, Michael.
I'll try and be concise. Enough stories. I'll dial back my stories.
No problem. The stories are great. My second question, I must ask the question about how people can find out more. And I know you've got some links that you sent to Sarah to put in the chat box. So we need to make sure you've
Yes.
got some time for that. But before that, there's
Okay.
one other question that I want to ask you. I know that we've talked about how systems it's not all the complicated stuff like software so much. Yes, they can be a system, but sometimes it's the simple things, the words we say, the scripts, the checklists. But one question, obviously this year is very topical with the increase in large language models and AI. What are your thoughts on
Never
the
heard of it.
impact
Never
of
heard of it.
AI when it comes to systemizing and automating a bookkeeping accounting business?
Yeah, it's a big. This is a big one. This is a very interesting time in our society, quite frankly. So it goes big. It goes really big. And whenever I think about how is this going to impact our business, how is this going to impact our clients' business, how is it going to impact their clients' businesses, I have no idea other than to go back to history. That if a human can have a machine do it, then they're going to, right? And that's going to be where the machines are going to go. Whatever we can have done by a machine, everybody's going to jump on board with that. And why wouldn't you? Why would you not want to do that, right? So we know that there's going to be a major. It's been happening all along with just simple automations, but as those machines get smarter, obviously it's going to take on more and more and more of that work, and actually become a reality that some of the transactional compliance work could be removed from the business, right? But we don't know what that looks like, and there's still lots of big gaps because there's humans involved in so many parts and pieces of the whole ecosystem. And so I don't think people need to be running for the hills just yet from the industry, because you got to remember is that along with these computers and machines and all of this good stuff that's happening, there's also increased government regulation, right? Always increased government regulation. And so where I would be focused and where we are focusing is on what is the relationship beyond the compliance work. The compliance work is definitely important, needs to get done, and it has to get done well. And as systems come in and new ways of doing that work and becoming more efficient, the value is going to be in the relationship with clients and helping them navigate what the information that's coming through to them. And I mean, you talk about this all the time in the way you price a business. It's called the Value Pricing Academy. Well, the value piece is determining what do clients value and where are they trying to get to. And I mean, to dumb that down really, if a business owner is trying to get to a certain amount of growth, if you can help them hit those growth numbers or remove things from their plate or help them have more peace of mind, reduce their tax burden, whatever it is, that's value. And so that's what you're pricing, right? It's figuring out where they want to be, where are they now? If I help you get there, what's that worth to you, right? That's the area. Creativity comes, humans are creative. Humans can think, right? So the more thinking you're selling, right? Your thinking, your thought, your own intellectual property of how you do your work, that's the area to continue to focus on, because that's not going away, right? And I remember hearing way back, and this was like actually around the time that you and I met in 2015, there was a futurist talking about that. And the concept of the Rolling Stones being the number one economic or massive piece of the GDP of the UK was the Rolling Stones, a rock band, right? Why? Because they're creative. They're delivering something creative that no computer can do. Now, we're looking now, it's like some computers can do pretty good Rolling Stone stuff now. But so we don't know where it's going, but focus on the human aspects of the business. That's where the value is. That's what you price, right? Those conversations, and that's the area. But it's going to be really interesting to see where it all goes. And it's something that everyone on this call and listening needs to keep an eye on. Use it to leverage in your business, but also keep an eye on where it's taking the industry.
Absolutely. Great answer. Love those thoughts. Right, we need to make sure that we find out how people can find out more. But also, Lisa did, I think you answered this earlier, Michael, but let me just,
Yep.
Lisa says, has pure bookkeeping gone into the UK yet? And then once you've answered that, if you can just tell people how they can find out more.
Yes, absolutely. We have a few customers in the UK using pure bookkeeping more on kind of like a beta We are writing manuals and systems and process and the whole workflow software, getting that all prepared. We're very, very close. I would say reach out, and then that's a way to find us, purebookkeeping.com. Go to purebookkeeping.com. We have a program called The 7 Secrets of Growing Your Bookkeeping Business. You can check that out. There's some free resources that you can get. There's a contact us page. You can reach out to us. And of course, there's the podcast. You can listen to the podcast. There's all sorts of resources around the Successful Bookkeeper, and that's thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. And so, yeah, we're excited to be going into the UK. Still some work to be done there to be ready for that, but I would think that we're going to be early 2024 launching. I'm ready. And that's how you find us, and welcome any of your questions to come through the contact us, or reach out back when you get to the website.
Awesome. And I know Sarah's got some links that she'll put into the comments and in the description afterwards as well. In fact, she's ahead of me. She's done that. So you'll find some links coming your way, whichever platform you are on.
Yes.
Michael.
Well, we'll start real quick before you wrap up, is with the 7 Secrets, we do, when you buy the 7 Secrets program, we do provide you with a copy of the eMyth Bookkeeper. And that was kind of a beautiful thing that happened for Debbie. Is I met Michael Gerber in Toronto in 2015 at a conference. I interviewed him. I told him about Pure Bookkeeping. He's like, you should write eMyth Bookkeeper. Debbie and Peter wrote that book with him. Like, it was her dream, right, to have done this. So if you want the access to that book, you'll get it with the 7 Secrets as well.
Awesome. I've had a great fun with this conversation, and I'd like to continue it sometime. So perhaps if people are interested, we can pick up on this another time next year. It would be great if everybody listening could put into the comments, for the benefit of Michael and me, what's the best thing you've learned? What's the thing in the last hour that you thought, wow, that's amazing. I need to do something with that. What's the best idea that you've learned? And I can share those responses with Michael. Michael, you've been brilliant. Thank you so much for coming along. Mark. I'm going to wrap up with a few announcements, but I look forward to speaking to you again sometime soon. Okay. Bye for now, Michael.
Thanks, Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, just a few quick things, including what's happening on Thursday, just so you know. Before that, let me just remind you, if you haven't yet got your ticket for our value pricing conference, it takes place October the 3rd to the 5th, and I always forget what time it kicks off. It's about 10:30 Eastern Standard Time, I think. Sarah can tell you. It's on the website when you go. If you've got your smartphone, you can hold that up to the QR code. Make sure you use the coupon code. It's on the screen. Sarah's going to share the link and the coupon code, so you get 75% off the ticket. So that's our next big event. And I'm going to spend 3 days and talking about value pricing. We have some amazing guest speakers as well. And the other thing, our next live stream, this is our second of 3 live streams. Our third one is same time, same place, of course, on Thursday. And Thursday, we'll be talking about how to simplify your marketing with ChatGPT. Emily's going to be joining me. Emily's our in-house head of marketing, and also ChatGPT AI genius. So the two of us will be sharing you what are the best practical ways to use ChatGPT to really turbocharge your marketing and help you win more clients. So I hope to see you on Thursday as well. And I'm going to play out with some music, as I normally do, for 2 or 3 minutes. It gives me a chance to just read the comments that you've put into the chat box. If you've enjoyed this session, of course, hit the like button, the thumbs up. That would be much appreciated. And I will see you soon. Goodbye for now.
I wasted all my time, I wasted all my nights, I wasted it on someone who's indifferent. He didn't love me right, he told me I was blind, but I never really wanted to listen.